Alright guys, so welcome to this section where we're going to build a very simple website about Programmer's Fun Fact with this font's awesome icon. The point here is when you will click on Fetch News, you will get all the news posted on the website. But when you will refresh the page, everything will disappear. When we will deploy this website to Netlify, we're going to create a serverless function, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to have our JSON data inside our project. We're going to create some function, and then we're going to do fetch API from that API that it's inside our project already via that serverless function. You can think about this serverless function as your backend. So it's going to manage everything under the hood. You just write your function, you keep it there in a folder, Netlify will detect it, and anytime you want to change anything, you can do that in your code. You get to rebuild and redeploy your website, and things change in a matter of seconds, basically 30 to 40 seconds max. So yeah, that's it. With that being said, let me go now, and I'm going to go to the folder where I want to build my project. I'm gonna call it prog_site. I'm going to open that with Visual Studio Code. By the way, we can do git init just to initialize an empty Git repository. And here I want index.html, and let's just do like that. Let's do styles.css. Let's do main.js. That's our JavaScript file. And also I want our API, our JSON file. So I'm going to call that file data.json. Okay. Also, I'm going to create a folder called functions. Inside that functions folder, I want to create another file. And this function is going simply to get data from that data.json. So I'm going to call it get data.js in a camel case like that. Okay, good. Now I want to have a simple boilerplate. Here we're going to say JamStack website 2024. So I will need fonts awesome CDN, just to copy the CDN. That's going to be in cdnjs.com, and I'm going to copy that first link. Just gonna paste that here. Also, by the way, I will need from Google Fonts. I'm not going to do it, just I want to show you. So basically I want to change the font in my website, and I want the Fira code. That's the font that I always prefer. Okay, I've chosen that. You can click on get font, get embed code, and you can add this in your styles.css file. And then I will have icon with a class of FA solid, FA user, and FA4x. All right, good. After the header, I need a main. In that main, I need a button with ID fetch data btn. And here we'll say fetch data. Next, I want a div with an ID of news, or let's do data container to be consistent. And this line says simply that we're going to display the data dynamically via this JavaScript function. After the main, I want to have a footer just for visual flair. I'm going to have a paragraph. Then I'm going to have the copyrights. Okay, we'll say here 2024 JamStack news website. So yeah, that's everything except that I haven't included yet the JavaScript source. What have we called the file? Main.js. Okay, main.js. Again, guys, I'm going to just copy paste. It's a simple styling. You won't have any problems understanding the code here. So that's it for our styles.css file. Let me just shut that. Let's also shut the HTML, and let's go directly to the fun part with main.js. First thing that I want to do is I want to select the button element with this ID fetch data. So const fetch. So we have called it fetch data button. So fetch data btn is equal to document dot get element by ID. Also, I want the same thing for the container. For the container, data container, okay. Next, I want to add an event listener for that fetch data button. Fetch data button, and I'm going to add an event listener. We're going to listen on a click. Also, we need a listener, and listener in this case is going to be a function. But it's not going to be only a function, it's going to be an asynchronous function because we want to fetch data from that API. So we're going to await to fetch data from that file. We have called it data.json. So data.json, we're going to store that in response variable. And then I want to parse this JSON data to JavaScript objects. So we're going to, again, do await. I'm going to take the response.json, and we're going to also store that in a variable called data. And then here I want to call a function that I haven't created yet. This function is going to render everything here on the page. So render data function. So this function, I'm gonna call it render data, and it's going to take data as main parameter. And then I want to iterate through each data item. So before we do that, let's actually write our data.json. Again, I'm going to copy paste that. Basically, it's a lot of fun fact. It's very interesting, by the way. Fun facts about programmers, like the first programmer, she was actually a woman, Ada Lovelace. Yeah, and other very interesting stuff. Later, I'm going to show you if we're going to change our API data live when it's hosted on Atlify. Things are going to change momentarily. It's going to rebuild and redeploy our website. And that's the beauty of JamStack. So here, all of our data will live, and this file is going to be hosted on Netlify later. So for each API call you make by clicking that button here, the data are being fetched in the background via this serverless function that we didn't create yet or haven't created yet. And again, this is a simple JavaScript file that plays the role of your backend. We're going to talk about that in details when we'll get to this point. So this is our data file. Let's just shut that. Let's get back here. So let me just add a comment here, iterate through each item, each programmer's fun fact item. And to do that simply, I'm going to take the parsed data from the JSON file and do for each. And this is going to take a callback function with item as main input. And it's going to return basically the the inner HTML on the page. But before that, I need to create a div element for each item. So I'm going to say const data item. And that data item is going to be equal to document.create element. And inside here, we're going to add div to the DOM tree. Next, I want to add a CSS class, and I'm going to call it just data item or data -item, whatever. So this data item, the data item dot class list dot add, and we'll say here data -item. Then I want to populate the data item with the HTML using the backticks or the template literals. So to do that, I'm going to say data item dot inner HTML. So I want h2 tags. So basically, just to show you, I need two things. I need the title and I need the content. So inside here, so let's just close the h2 tag, and I will use $, curly brace, and inside here I will take item.title, and also I want not h2, but I want paragraph. So the paragraph for the content itself. So item.content. Okay, good. And then finally, just make sure to have the semicolon. And then finally, I want to append this data item to the data container. So I'm gonna say data container dot append child. So we're going to append that as a child in the DOM tree for each data item. Now don't forget to call that function render data and pass the data here. Now if we'll click on fetch data, everything is being fetched. If we'll click on fetch data again, you see they're being repeated, duplicated. Look. Again, you see. So to prevent that, I'm going to, before the iteration, I want to clear the previous content of that data container. So data container dot inner HTML, and we're going to set it to empty strings. So if you'll click it one time, that's it. If you'll click it again, nothing happens. I'm clicking, by the way, if you can't hear. All right, nothing happens. Perfect. The last thing is to create our serverless function. This serverless function here is going to retrieve data from the data.json and it's going to return it as a JSON response with HTTP status code 200. So we'll have status code and body. That's what we're going to write here. The basic idea is that inside the main.js, we're going actually to change the fetching. We're going to write a link because we will need Netlify to detect this serverless function inside functions folder. So I will need to have a netlify.toml, and we'll have here the settings. And the settings are simple. You need just functions, and you will set your directory functions. If you will change the name of the folder, don't forget to change it here. That's very important. Otherwise, Netlify will not detect where your serverless function lives. Okay, so that's that. That's the last thing I wanted to add in my project. And also this data.json, we're going to change it. Well, maybe I can comment this line out and we'll type again const response equal to await fetch. And here we'll have the link. So the link simply is going to be ./netlify/functions/get data. So whenever you will click on that route after deployment, it's going to trigger that function. Of course, the add event listener. It's going to check out that route netlify/functions/get data. So it's going to go to get data. Thanks to netlify.toml, it knows where this get data function lives. And it's going to just trigger that backend quote unquote. Serverless because there is no server. You don't maintain your data in a server. Okay, it's just a function that plays the role of the backend. I'm going just to have this const prog data or programmer's data equal to, we're going to require that from that path. So up like that, and we'll go to data.json. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I want to define handler function for this serverless function. So I'm going to say exports.handler, and that's going to be equal to a function, which is an asynchronous function, because we want to return two things. The first thing is the HTTP status code, which is essentially 200, which means everything is okay. And the second thing is the body, which is essentially json.stringify, and we're going to pass the programmer's data. All right, so this simply is going to stringify the JavaScript object to JSON data. Okay, that's the opposite of parsing method. We'll do git add. We're going to add all of the files. Then I want to do git for the first commit with the initial commit. Okay, good. Also, I want to get branch main. So it's going to change from master to main. and I'm going to open github.com. All right, let's just do like this. Okay, create new repository. We're going to say here JamStack site prog data. That's a very long name. Okay. This is a JamStack website built in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and deployed in Netlify. Okay, hit enter. All right, so let me just copy that, put this here, do like this, paste that in, enter. And finally, yeah, we're going to push origin main. Great stuff. Let's refresh that page. And you will see we have our code here. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and open netlify.com and start the deployment process. So I will have my GitHub repository on the right side and Netlify website on the left side. Notice that I've used only 10 megabytes out of 100 gigs granted by Netlify. I've also deployed some websites and projects, and it's now time to show you how to do that. So I'm going to click on Add New Site, and you can import your existing project from a GitHub repository, from GitLab, from Bitbucket. Also, you can start from a template. You can use Next.js, Nuxt, Gatsby, Hugo, or whatever. Or you get to deploy manually if you want. So I'm going to import an existing project, and I'm going to use GitHub, deploy from GitHub. You see that it's authorized now. Now what you have done is you have granted Netlify the authorization to access all of your GitHub repositories, and you get to organize them the way you want. So now I want to search for the JamStack site prog data here in the search bar. So JamStack. So that's our site that we have pushed the code to 12 minutes ago. We're going to click on that, the site name, and that's awesome because years ago you didn't have the opportunity to do that. Let's do prog data site. We're not sure if this name is taken or not. We're going to discover later when we will click on deploy. So I'm going to click on deploy prog data site. The first step that we have connected to GitHub. The next step, we are starting up our deployment. So the production phase went from starting up to building to uploading. And finally, we have a published website. It's going also to give you a preview for your website here. If I'll do refresh, we have indeed a preview. If you will click on that, you can see here that it's running on the browser. And if you will click on fetch data, we have indeed fetched the data from that URL. And take a look here to functions. That's by default Netlify /functions. Let me just show you quickly. If you'll click on build and deploy, you'll get here below. Take a look, runtime not set, okay, base directory, package directory. Let me just maximize this. If you'll take a look here, functions directory, functions. Let me click on configure and show you that. Below here, functions directory is set to functions. The directory where Netlify can find your compiled functions to deploy them defaults to Netlify /functions if not set. So if you will not set that, it's going to default to Netlify /functions. So when we'll do refresh, fetch data, fetching data instantaneously, it's static, it's awesome, it doesn't take time. So you see, this model is very useful, like I mentioned before, in terms of scalability, because Netlify with your serverless function will let your app scale automatically without managing the server. Also by separating HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from the backend, which is your serverless function, as we said, you can maintain a clean code base. Also, let me show you if you want to change something on your website. So what I want to do is I want to change that first programmer to whatever. So you can change in your JSON data. So instead of first programmer, I would say, for instance, anything. Second coder. Control S to commit the changes. And if you will go here, you'll find that automatically Netlify has detected some changes. It started up. It's going to be building or rebuilding your website based on the changes that you have made in your GitHub code. So it's building, it's going to, finalize it and publish your website again. So we're going to wait, uploaded, published, and we're done. Let's get back to our website. If you will refresh, you will find that when you will click fetch data, you will find here you have second coder. So come on guys, how awesome is that? Let's say in styles.css, I don't like that color, so I will go in the header here, in the background color, and I will change that to, let's say, blue, for example. And I will save, commit the changes, update the styles.css, get back here, do refresh, and you will see here that again it has started up, updating the styles.css file, right? And if you will click here, this is the deploy log. While you're waiting, you can play a game. That's awesome. Post-process, cleanup, deploying, building, initializing, all complete. Let's do preview, and everything has changed. All colors have changed. And this is going to be the end of this project. In the next part, we're going to create our second project. I'm going to be using static site generator. Mainly, I'm going to be working with Next.js. So you guys go ahead and take a small break, grab a cup of coffee, get back to your VS Code, and we're going to be start coding shortly.